What's the craziest butterfly effect that happened to you because of a small decision you made? I had to call my heart surgeon to give him my new insurance hashes. I had only just gotten them because the person who had them had the flu and was not getting back to me as soon as I got my numbers. I called surgeon. The receptionist said, "Oh, hey, we just had a cancellation for this Friday. Do you want it?" Of course I wanted to get it over and not wait another month. Decided to take the open heart surgery cancellation appointment a month before my actual appointment. And well, surgeon said that thank goodness I did, because once he got a look inside, he realized I would not have survived to the original appointment date. So, if the insurance lady didn't have the flu, I would have gotten those numbers a lot sooner and never gotten the offer to have the surgery when I did. Someone else's flu saved my life. So a few years back, I lived in Nice, south of France, for a while. As a musician I would make a bit of extra cash busking. And one day, I figured I'd go and busk at the Promenade d'Anglaise by the sea. It's usually packed, and it's just a generally pleasant place to be. I set up, played a couple of songs, and was doing pretty well, and making a decent amount of money. Then suddenly not one, but two of my guitar strings snapped. I even remember I was playing The Scientist at the time. I was massively gutted and decided to cut my losses early. I stormed off home, by the station, in a bit of a sulk at having to restring my guitar, and cutting short what was essentially one of my most productive days of busking since moving there. Literally 1 hour later, my phone starts to blow the duck up with family and friends freaking out and asking if I was at the promenade. It was Bastille Day, 2016. The truck drove into the same crowd I was playing to, killing 86 people, including my at the time GF's uncle. I had 2 other friends who were amongst the 458 injured. I moved home the next month because it was too much and haven't been back since. It's hard to explain. Sometimes I think I was super lucky. Sometimes I just kind of cry and wonder why I was lucky and others weren't. It's surreal. And despite what people think, it's a truly horrible feeling. Semicolon. Edit. I'm overwhelmed by the support of people. I will be getting therapy, and hopefully in time I'll be able to return to Nice as it was one of my favorite places on earth. Take care of yourselves, and if you've been through something similar, it looks like help is out there. Thank you all. I decided to invite my chemical lab partner to lunch on the first day of college. Just to be friendly and try to make more than one friend at school. We met up with the only other friend I'd made at school so far. He thought my lab partner was cute, invited himself to hang out with her, and then fell in love with her roommate instead. He ended up married to the roommate. They've been together for 22 years and have 2 children. Watched Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and got so annoyed at the candidates not knowing a simple question about Katy Perry that I applied. Got in, got to play, won a lot of money, booked a holiday to a dream destination with that money, met my husband there. We now have a 1-year-old son. In high school I took an intermediate biology course. I had never done biology before, but was good at science generally, so I thought the intermediate course would be a good fit. My science teacher of a couple year previous happened to walk into my class to talk to the biology teacher, and she spotted me in the class. She asked me what grades I had got the previous year. I told her, and she nodded and left. A minute later she came back in and asked me to gather my belongings and leave the class. I was pretty sure I was in trouble for something I couldn't recall. She led me to another classroom and sat me down on an empty chair. Then she just started teaching. Turns out that she was running the advanced class that year and just decided to steal me as a student. I went on to take biology at undergrad level and then a master's. I ended up doing a PhD in immunology and now work as an advisor for pharma companies. It gets better though. I decided I wanted to do my master's in London and met a girl on the way. We are now 10 years in and own a house together. All that because that teacher happened to look in my direction. I had to renew the sticker on my license plate a couple of years ago and really didn't feel like sitting in the waiting room by myself forever. So I told my mom I'd take her out to dinner after if she came with me. The guy working at the counter turned out to be my mum's long lost biological brother. If she hadn't come with me, I would have never known. Edit. Wow, this really blew up. I'll let my mom know that you all think her story is cool too. Cheers. My husband. He found out after 18 years that his mom's side of the family was Spanish, not Mexican. He found this interesting and changed his country to Spain on MySpace instead the US, where he really was. Meanwhile in Australia, I was helping my friend find Spanish people to add as a friend as she was learning the language. I came across my now husband and decided to send him a friend request as well. We got along really well and met in person after 3 years. Have been together 11 years. Married for 7. If he didn't change his country to Spain, and only for a day or so, we'd never know each other existed. Made a last minute decision to go to a friend's divorce party and met my wife. My desire for pizza set off a chain reaction that destroyed my family. One day got home from school and really wanted pizza. Family was poor, so spontaneous food trips weren't always in the cards. Really worked my pouty face to my mom and begged to go to the local pizza place for dinner. She said alright. While chilling there I saw my uncle walk by and I was like, Daduck, Uncle X, is that you? Now you might say, well, he wanted pizza, what's the big deal? Well, he lived several states away, so to arbitrarily be in town and not tell anyone was strange. Turned out he was having an affair with his sister-in-law, my aunt on the other side of the family. She was basically a money-grubbing whore and the family protested. One thing led to another and everyone hates each other now, and we haven't had contact in like 20 years. I just wanted some pizza. My existence. When my dad was about 20, he needed a phone number, so he called the operator from a payphone. She gave him the number. He hung up, and she accidentally refunded the money back to the payphone. She called the payphone back and asked him if he could put the money back in, which he did, and hung up again. She accidentally refunded the money again and had to call back again to ask him to put the money back in. He didn't, hung up again. She was so flustered. She refunded the money again and called back again, and my father got to chatting with her and got her number. They set up a date, which she stood him up for. Then she forgot his name when he called her again. Then they actually got coffee and 4 years later were married. This coming August it'll be 50 years for them. If my dad didn't need that phone number, I wouldn't be here. Edit. My dad still calls it the most expensive phone call he ever made. Out of university, looking for a job, and exhausting all the online resources. On a whim, I looked in the career section in a print newspaper that was lying around in the house. We never subscribed to that paper. I don't know why it was even there. Got the job in a different city. Met someone who is now one of my best friends, who introduced me to their friends, who introduced me to their friends, and so on. Until I was eventually introduced to my wife. If I'd found a job where I actually planned on working, there is absolutely no way I would have crossed paths with any of these people. Edit 1. I met my wife through a friend, who I met through another friend, who I met through another friend, who I met through the first friend I made at the company. Edit 2. I guess I need to go watch Early Edition. Close bracket. About 10 years ago, there were no PC games to play, so I tried using Windows XP's Movie Maker out of boredom. I didn't know that I'm going to enjoy it and take it seriously. Now, I'm currently working on a TV/film production as a video editor. Clarification, I mean, there's no games that is installed with our computer back then. About a year ago, I went to a study group with some people in my major. Now I have the closest set of friend I could ever ask for. They helped me when my car was broken and I couldn't get to and fro from college, when I didn't have enough money to buy myself food. Now, I have a good job, and 2 of my friends and I are getting an apartment together in a couple of months. 4 years ago, a kid I barely knew from school invited me to a Six Flags. I was a bit of a loner at the time, and I heard rumors about this kid being weird, so I intended to not go. On the day he wanted me to go, I was feeling extra bored and decided on a whim, why not? So I went and met this kid and 2 of his friends I've never met at a Six Flags. 4 years later, and that kid is my best friend. And I have 3 other very close friends I met through him. Not only that, but I also met my first girlfriend because of the connections some of my new friends had. It transformed my high school years from being alone to having an amazing group of friends I could do almost anything with. I intended to ask my best friend to be my best man one day, and I don't intend on ever getting out of touch with any of them. I'm home from college now, and we are going to have a lot of fun together. Best decision I've ever made. Was going to carpool with my aunt to a family gathering. At the last minute I decided to go by myself, so I could leave early if I wanted. It was a ways out of town and I didn't want to be stuck there. On the way there she drove off the road into a ditch. She was okay, but the passenger side of her car was totally smashed in. The older I get, the more I'm constantly cognizant of the vast cascade of seemingly insignificant decisions and actions that led me to where I am. For example, a decision 25 years ago to change a refrigerator light bulb before going out resulted in my being at the wrong time and place so as to get mugged, which resulted in my decision to move out of the city I had been living in, which resulted in my meeting my wife, and from there to having all my kids and the whole shebang. I would have had a different whole shebang had I not changed that light bulb that afternoon. But the path to the present leads through that and 1,000 other similarly trivial decisions. At a university career fair and just as a long day taking to companies and heading out when I see a Honda booth. Designing cars would be awesome, but there is a huge line. It has been a long day, and what are the chances? But wait, they are giving away hats and shirts and model cars. So I talk to them. A day later I get a call back for an online assessment. I fill that out and don't hear anything back for a month or so. I get a call one night saying I was an alternate and someone cancelled last minute, so they want to fly me up for on-site interviews. I go and end up getting and accepting an offer. After graduation I move about 1,000 miles away from home for my new job where a few years after I meet my now wife and we have 2 kids. I never would have crossed paths with her otherwise. So the entire course of my life was shifted because Honda gave away good swag at their career fair booth. I went to a career fair one day as I wanted to get a job in the IT field. I was in school, IT tech, I know, for computer networking. Saw a stand for a gas station chain and thought to myself, I don't want to work at a gas station, and kept on going. Passed out my resume and had a good talk with the local company that a few of my classmates worked. Was about to leave and pass the gas station stand again, but this time I saw it on their poster. Decided to just see what the ad was about and dropped off my resume. Talked with the recruiter and was told about a department that needed an intern. I got an interview for a position and it was more of a this is what you will be doing and this is what it pays. When can you start? 13 years later I'm still working for a gas station chain and really enjoying it. I sent a friend from secondary school, who I had a huge crush on, a message saying happy birthday a couple years after we left school. Did the whole we'll have to catch up soon thing. Not expecting much. He replied with how about Monday? I saw him that Monday for a coffee. Next month will be our 6th anniversary. Best thing that ever happened to me. My friends joke I'm queen of escaping the friend zone. Edit. Wow, thank you for the awards and upvotes. Loved seeing how many other similar stories there are. Makes me all warm and fuzzy inside. Stay safe everyone. My parents' dream was to have a famous child. When my older sister's figure skating career ended in her early 20s, the spotlight shifted to me. I was a fine oboist and took private voice lessons with intent to audition for the local music faculty, opera. Close bracket. In any case, there was a lot of pressure, and while I was successful at school and classical music, it was never enough. At 17, before senior year began, my sister gifted me a kitten. My parents had given her to in her senior year and the implication was that it was my turn. When my sister dropped me off, my parents locked me out, saying that if I wanted my own pet I needed my own place. So I found one. That night, I worked 3 jobs to support myself through senior year and graduated with entrance scholarships to both of the local universities. I couldn't afford a music degree while living on my own, even with the entrance scholarships. And good thing, entering the workforce showed me how much I love active jobs. 3 years later, I enrolled in college and became an industrial mechanic/millwright, to my parents' great shame. After a few years of this, I landed a sweet contract where I work on Saturdays and Sundays, but receive a full week's pay. Although I'm a living beacon of disappointment, I comfort myself with my $100k a year job, 2-day work week, and 2 cats. Being kicked out over a kitten saved me from wasting years chasing an improbable career just to please my parents. Edit, spelling. I was always super flirty with the girl from ours, but we were always seeing other people / don't date at work, so when she left the company I was bummed. A year or two later a coworker asked me to search my email archives, that was a thing back then, for something he needed. I ended up stumbling across the farewell to my work friend's email from our girl, and she sent it from her personal email address. I reached out to her. We had coffee, then a date, then many dates, then I love youse, and I put a ring on it as soon as possible. 12 years later, extremely happily married, 2 goofy kids, 2 evil cats, and she still puts up with my bullshit. Edit, we are huge Office fans and somehow never realized how meter it was to our relationship. It warms our hearts to get so much love, and my wife is thrilled to be compared to Holly. Not sure I'm feeling like a Michael, but duck it, I'll take it. My wife got an email from her old colleagues the day we returned home from our honeymoon, asking if she wanted to star in a short film they were doing for fun. She said sure, and asked if I could come along, as she knew I had an interest in movies. But at the time I worked in life insurance and was miserable. It was more than an interest. I had always wanted to make films, but never made the right connections with people and didn't know where to start. I made friends with the producer of that short film my wife was in, and 11 years later filmmaking and video production is my career. I've shot feature films, short films, video for TV and web, and all over the world because of that one email to my wife. Changed our lives. Oh, and that original short film never got finished, lol. Edit, wow. Can't believe how this blew up, and it's been so positive. I'm all about helping anyone and everyone that may be in the position I was in however I can. Many of you have asked similar questions asking to see some of the work I've done, or for advice. I'm happy to help. I started a room chat, so if you want to join, send me a DM and I'll add you. Thanks everyone. The first day I ever signed up for internet back in 1999, I installed Mic because it was on the starter disk my ISP gave me and joined a random chat room. Over the course of the next year the regulars in that room became like family to me. We would talk about everything. All that practice made me a fast typist and way better communicator than I was before that. They would even help me when I had trouble understanding something in my college classes. I also met my husband in that room, and we've been happily married for 18 years. Others from our Little Hike family are married too, and we still keep in touch. All because I randomly chose that chat room that day. Edit, wow, this really exploded. Thanks for the awards. I'm happy to know there are so many of you other Reich people out there with good memories like mine. If there's any other of my old Iconet #PLANETCHAT people out there from 20 years ago, DM me, PRK. I have one for another person. In 2014, I was coaching my twins M/F rec flag football team. My oldest player has a younger sister who came to watch her practice. We will call her Grace. She saw my daughter on the team, told her dad there's a girl on that team, and the next week, she was on my roster. Her and my daughter became fast friends. While the flag football season was wrapping up, I was putting together my roster for the upcoming rec volleyball team. At the end of one of my practices, my daughter invited Grace to play on the volleyball team together. Grace had played the previous season and not cared for it too much. Grace agreed and played from rec to club then to high school with my daughter. My daughter graduated last year and I watched Grace as captain lead her team to a state championship, and she has a D1 scholarship for volleyball next fall. I chose to rearrange the sequence of classes slightly before starting my education. By doing this, I had to commute to a different branch of the school in a different town than the one I was originally signed up for. On my first day there, I helped a girl who had managed to break both of her arms in a drunken shopping cart accident. I learned later, this girl, whom I would absolutely never have met had I not changed my classes around, is my wife through 14 years. Edit. Oh wow. This blew up. Thanks so much for the badges and awards. Kind strangers. Right before freshman year of high school, I was interested in trying out for the tennis team. I was lukewarm about it, and the morning of tryouts my dad came into the room and asked if I wanted to go. I was leaning towards no and just wanted to be lazy in bed. But my dad asked, "Do you think you'll regret it if you don't?" The answer was yes. So I went and tried out. I ended up meeting my absolute best friends. We kindled my love for tennis. Was on varsity for 3 years, and it completely dictated my high school career. The other day I was driving home from work. Traffic was light, and I was behind a car with a number plate that started KFD. Decided to duck through KFC drive-thru for chippers with extra salt as a little treat to myself. They took forever to bring them out, and by the time they finally did, all told about 10 minutes later, traffic has slowed to a complete halt. I need to get over a bridge that's normally 6 lanes which has now been reduced to 1. Turns out it's due to a massive collision involving several cars. When I finally get to the point where I'm driving past, I notice a number plate on one of the cars. That same KFD number plate. If I hadn't stopped to get hot chips, I'm fairly sure I'd have been in a major collision. TL. Doctor, KFC chippers with extra salt saved my life. Edit. Didn't think the chippers would be the most interesting thing in this post. For clarification, I'm Australian, Melbs, and calling them chippers instead of chips improves your quality of life. In Australia at least. Try it and see. I was given 2 start dates for an entry-level job in a large organization. The date I choose to start led to working in a small but high-profile team, so I got lots of exposure with senior management and I became the candy guy who'd fix a million tiny problems. That recognition led to promotions, a fantastic career, further professional qualifications, and working overseas for several years. I also met my best friend and my partner. If I'd chosen the other date, I'd have been sent to a data processing pool and been fairly anonymous. Edit. I can't believe I'm actually writing this, because in my many throwaways I've got at most 100 upvotes. That said, OMG. When I posted this earlier I didn't expect anything like the reaction. With the upvotes, comments and kind awards, I think I've replied to everyone, and I've read all of your stories and personal experiences. Even the people who sub-posted mean comments. I know you're better than silly trolling. There's so many wonderful stories I've had a massive grin reading through them. If you have posted, I have imagined whole lives, rich and joy for you. There are also some stories about people struggling through no fault of their own. To them I would say please don't give up. It can seem reading these comments that everyone else got ahead in life, but that's only part of the story. Behind every success there's a lifetime of wrong turns and what could have beens. I've had more than a few bumps in the road and I expect many more lie on my future. You may be down, but you are not out. Thank you again so much for reading and sharing. I so wish I could meet you all in real life and raise a glass together. You're all such extraordinary, wonderful people. I made a dumb Facebook post because I was bored. Like for a TBH. A girl liked the post and I sent her a message. 8 years later, we are now married. In Afghanistan. Wasn't done with my coffee, so I passed on a trip from one base to another. There was another convoy a few hours later. Most everyone died who took the first convoy. My second cup of coffee wasn't even cold when I found out. Edit. Holy shit guys and gals. Aka the Reddit community. I just checked my phone and have so much outpouring of support that am overwhelmed. Thanks for caring. Trying not to tear up. Not working. There was this rainy day that flooded a small piece on the street on the way to my now ex-GF house. She had to stay over the night. Now I'm Simone's father. This is obviously going to get buried because I'm late to the party. A few years ago, I was on the phone with my boss as I was getting home, discussing what we needed to get done the next day when he asked what the F is that noise? Exclamation mark. Apostrophe. I said it'd make more sense to just show you. So I took a video of me opening the door and feeding my very loud farm cats. I realized I didn't like anyone crowding me awkwardly looking at my phone when I show someone a video. So I uploaded it to YouTube. The next morning I went to show him on the computer and noticed it was up to 11 views, which I found odd. Then it went viral. Thousands of views per hour. I was getting constant calls and emails about buying the video rights and just asking for permission to use it. It took off again in the pandemic time and has been a nice little source of income when things have been rough. All because I don't like holding my phone to show someone else a 30-second video. Decided to approach a girl in a wheelchair in a bar because I thought it was cool of her to be out and about having a good time. We become bar buddies. A week later she brings a friend with her. I get along with the friend. We start dating. We marry. We have a daughter. Had I not said hi to the wheelchair lady that night, I wouldn't have the most precious things in my life right now. Edit. Okay. Since this got a little attention, I'll provide a little bit more literature. Like said before, after approaching the girl, let's call her Y, on the wheelchair, we hung out the rest of the night and exchanged contact numbers. I did not intend to pursue her in any romantic fashion, even though she was actually very attractive. Her disability was temporary. She told Mr. she passed out in the bathtub and hit her head, and when she woke up she couldn't feel her legs. SHR was doing physiotherapy. As far as I know, I believe she started walking a couple years after meeting her, so we were buddies for a while. I would push her chair all over town and made sure she was accepted in my group of friends. Even though my friends made jokes about me liking her, I never put myself out there as someone who was interested, and she always shut those jokes off and kind of belittled me as if I was not good enough for her, which was fine. I took it as banter between friends. The night I met my wife, I took Y home because, well, she was in a wheelchair and it was like 3 AM. We sat outside her house and talked until like 7 AM. We talked about everything and she asked if I liked her friend, my wife. I said yes, and she asked if I wanted her to give it a little push. I said I didn't need that, and I prefer it for things to be natural, and that I would approach her friend on my own terms, and that was that. Well, she didn't like that. Not that I didn't accept her help, but that I liked her friend. Apparently I had been leading her on for weeks by being nice and considerate of her disability. I didn't know it when I approached her first, but she confessed later she didn't have a lot of friends. So I tried to be one. Even if I was romantically invested in her, which I obviously wasn't, she would often assure me I had no chance with her. Now thinking about it, I guess she was negging me. Well, it worked pretty well. I had absolutely no interest in her in a romantic way, and after hanging out for weeks I actually stopped liking her because she would create drama everywhere we went, shouting at waitresses, bullying bouncers in overcrowded bars to let her in because she was in a wheelchair, playing psychological games with my friends. The list goes on. After finding out I was interested in her friend, she cancelled dinner with me and my friends and went to the restaurant her friend worked and created a scene and told her not to see me ever again. Her friend told her to calm down and still wanted to meet up at the same bar we always went. They came and Y spent the whole night bad-mouthing me to my friends. Every time I was talking to anyone in the bar, especially girls, she would come over and start shouting and telling them I wasn't worth shit. I had no clue why she was acting that way, and it turns out she liked me the whole time and told my friends I was acting like a teenager leading her on, even though she constantly negged me and belittled me in front of everyone. Someone was a little bit delusional. I had to come clean with her friend and said I never showed interest in Y and that I actually liked her and wanted to take her out. Y proceeded to run her friend over with the wheelchair. Her friend is now my wife, and every time Y's name comes up she won't shut up about how her foot still hurts even years after that incident. I spent the next weeks trying to turn my friends against me, even though they had known me for decades and knew I wasn't this mean person she was trying to say I was. I don't regret any of it. I was always fair and never tried or showed any interest besides friendship with her. When she asked me if I was into her friend, I straight up told her yes. I'm happy to have met her and that she introduced me to my wife. I hope she is well and healthy, but we don't keep in touch. No. I was parking my car on the street and was about to shut it off, but I noticed my car got pretty dirty last time I parked under that tree. Usually I don't care, but I drove forward another space. The next day I came outside and my car's rear suspension was damaged and tires were bent. Someone had smashed into it and took off. I went on to spend about $500 in repairs and my insurance couldn't cover it unless I found out who did it. I was very upset I couldn't go to work, and the tow truck driver pointed out that a neighbor had cameras up. I went as a last resort to ask those neighbors if they caught anything. The next day they emailed me footage of a vehicle that hit my car and parked a few houses up. They found the vehicle and took pictures of the damages too. I ended up getting $4,000 from their insurance company. Just wanted to try a cigarette when I was young. Now I'm barely surviving without it. In high school I read House of Leaves and one day was trying to explain the concept of the book to a friend. My drama teacher overheard. Said it sounded a bit like Pale Fire by Vladimir Nabokov. On his recommendation I read that book, which sparked an interest in Russian literature. Then I branched out from there, always seeking out new reading opportunities. My quest to find more reading led me to major in English and become a teacher myself. Being a teacher at a Title I school has had a huge impact on my political philosophy as well. So basically I'm who I'm today because my drama teacher suggested a book to me. Edit. I also suggest everyone read Pale Fire. Very good read. Decided to try weed in high school. Met a dude through weed connections. Became roommates. Roommate talks me into trying World of Warcraft. Meet a girl through WoW. Years later date her. Year after that move states. And marry her. Got kids now. My children are a direct result of weed. I sent a message to a girl in high school just asking if she was alright, which led to dating her for almost 3 years. During which time she convinced me to try the drama club she went to, which convinced me to take drama class the following year, which made me take it the next year, where I met my next girlfriend, who introduced me to the friends I have today, and if I hadn't met them, I wouldn't still feel sick from drinking on Saturday night. Moral of the story, never message a girl. You'll wake up 4 years later with a hangover. Responded to a cute girl's message on a Cupid while I was in my senior year of college. We hit it off, but then finals started and I didn't have the time and brain space to message her for a couple of weeks, so she thought I ghosted her. Finally I'm able to get back online and thankfully she's still there. So we picked right back up where we left off. We have our LDR for a little while, then a full-time job opens up where she works, which is my dream field. I apply, get the job, and move in with her. Job pays for me to get my master's degree in the field, accomplishing another lifelong dream of mine. Now we are still together 10 years, a house, and 5 pets later. Edit. I said 5 pets because we have 2 dogs, Boxer and Pug, and a cat. Not that the cat is lesser in my eyes. In fact, she's probably my favorite of the 3. She's simply smaller, though she takes no shit when our Boxer tries to play with her. Also, I'm a lesbian, and OkCupid was the place to meet other lesbians when I was in college, especially since it was a small southern town. When I was 18, I used some spray on hair dye for a Halloween costume. It looked freaking awesome, so I decided to go get it permanently dyed for the first time. This, in turn, made me incredibly attractive to a girl who was into that sort of thing, whom I began to date. We were in school, so when the year was over, I looked at my savings and realized I had enough to purchase a car, and that way, I could drive over to her town and see her when we weren't in school together. Because I suddenly had a car, my parents realized I was more independent, which made them reevaluate their current hometown. See, They had both grown up in a big city, but they moved to a smaller town to raise my siblings and me. When they saw that we were adults, they decided they didn't need to live in that smaller town anymore, and then they moved back to that bigger city. Well, this meant that I took a work term in that bigger city, where I met a coworker who helped me see where my relationship with this girl was not healthy. So I eventually decided it would be best to leave it. When I moved back to school at the end of my work term, one of my friends needed to go to the city where my parents lived for some paperwork, and because I had a car and I liked that big city, I offered to drive her over. This led to a long chat in the car where she and I got to know each other really well. We eventually became each other's best friend, after which point we started dating. In comparing this relationship to the previous one, I can see how this one is so much more healthy, and I understand that much more about healthy relationships. TLDR: a costume led to hair dye led to relationship led to car led to parents moving led to job led to breakup plus car plus parents move led to long car ride led to healthy relationship, and that, kids, is how I met your mother. One day when I was about 11 years old, I went to a farmer's market with my father. While we were there, I saw a street performer who was juggling, and I absolutely loved watching him. So I decided I was going to learn to juggle. A few months later, I started 6th grade, and my middle school had a juggling club after classes one day a week, where the very same guy I saw performing at the farmer's market would be teaching kids to juggle. So of course I went. 2 years later, I'm now 13 years old. I was looking online for some juggling forums, and /r/juggling was the most active one I could find. So I created a Reddit account. Eventually I started exploring other subreddits, and then one day I found myself in /r/Ama, where I read an Ama by a guy who had loaded a bunch of camping gear onto his bicycle and spent a year and a half riding from northern Alaska to the southern tip of South America. I loved cycling. I loved camping, and at the time, I'd recently returned home from my first international travel to Costa Rica, a country he went through on his journey, and absolutely loved that. So the way most 13-year-olds obsess over something, I developed a bit of an obsession for bicycle touring. Finally, the summer when I was 16 years old, I felt ready to pitch the idea to my parents, though on a much smaller scale. So one day, I borrowed my mom's bike, because the bike I had at the time had no way to carry my stuff, and I took whatever camping gear I could find in our garage and haphazardly bungeed it to the back of the bike. And then I rode to a state park about 40 miles from our house that we'd driven to many times before. I camped there for the night, then biked back home the next day. I absolutely loved it. So the next summer, it wasn't quite such a surprise to my parents when I pitched the idea of spending 4 days biking 200 miles, again camping in state parks each night. After that, I was going into my senior year of high school. I realized that perhaps my best opportunity to do some big crazy year-long bike camping adventure would be before I got stuck with a bunch of college debt, and then a career I couldn't easily leave, etc. So I decided to take a gap year after high school. After finishing high school in 2017, I realized that long-term traveling would require more money than I had. So after spending one last summer screwing around with my friends from high school before they scattered across the country for college, I took what little money I did have and went off on my most ambitious bike trip up to that point, spending 20 days cycling 300 miles around Lake Michigan, starting and ending at my home in southern Wisconsin. When I returned from the Lake Michigan trip, I had $2 and change to my name. So I quickly found a job, selling my soul to the world of retail for the better part of the next 2 years. The first 2 weeks of October of 2018, I took my vacation time from work and flew my bike out to Asheville, North Carolina to spend those 2 weeks cycling up the Blue Ridge Parkway and part of Skyline Drive before turning east to Washington, D.C. And then, last summer, I decided it was finally time. I quit my job in early July and then spent the next month and a half preparing for that big crazy bike ride I dreamed of for so long. In mid-August, I was finally ready, and I left my home in Wisconsin with the vague goal of riding to Seattle and down the Pacific coast. I spent the better part of the next 7 months cycling 300 miles around the country, turning east from San Diego into Arizona. In mid-March of this year, I was hanging out in Sedona, Arizona, waiting for the nighttime temperatures at the Grand Canyon to warm up a bit, when the coronavirus really started to take a turn for the worst. I was worried that airports and train stations might start shutting down, and not wanting to be halfway across the country from my family if and when that happened. I decided to bike the final 30 miles from Sedona up to Flagstaff and get on an Amtrak back home to the Midwest. Since then, I've been back to work, saving up some money for my next adventure. Now that I've seen most of the US that I want to, I'm starting to think of doing some international bike touring. And I'm pretty excited about the possibility of New Zealand once they reopen their borders. Eventually I intend to go back to college, but for the time being, I'm not in any rush to do that. But when it does happen, I'll surely be studying for a field that will allow me to continue to travel extensively. TL. Doctor, going to a farmer's market one day as a kid had a huge effect on my career choices and college plan, and along the way I learned to juggle, got introduced to Reddit, and rode a bicycle across the US. Years ago I picked up a hitchhiker who turned out to be a pretty philosophical kind of guy. One thing he said that resonated with me was, why would somebody want to do the same thing every day? 15 years later I still think about that guy every day as I'm commuting to the office again. In 2001 my wife and I took a 10-day vacation to Paris. At the end, we didn't fit everything in we wanted, so we reserved a new flight home 2 days later to have some more time. At the last minute, we decided changing the tickets was going to cost too much, and the connection home through New Jersey was just gonna mean a long, tiring day of travel, so we cancelled the change and took our original flight home. On September 9th, the flight we almost changed to was hijacked. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.